CNN's Anderson Cooper pressed former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi again and again and again if she thinks Vice President Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Joe Biden. Let's watch.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters. And by the way,
Do you think so?
She's very politically astute. I don't think people give her enough credit. She's, of course, values-based, consistent with the president's values and the rest. And people don't understand she's politically astute. Why would she be vice president if she were not? But when she was running for attorney general in California, she had 6% in the polls. 6% in the polls. And she politically astutely made her case about why she would be good, did her politics, and became attorney general. So people shouldn't underestimate what Kamala Harris brings to the table.
But do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the vice president of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much. You're a source of strength, inspiration, intellectual resource, and the rest. I think she's represented our country very well at home and abroad.
Host of Sabby Sab's podcast, Sabrina Salvati, joins us now to weigh in. Thanks for being with us, Sabrina.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
I really want to get into, of course, she's the vice president. She doesn't do that much. But really, the 6% in the polls argument, that she was getting 6% in the polls and then ultimately became attorney general in California. She had a long presidential campaign in 2020, and California is very different from the rest of the country, and she did not do so well in the rest of the country. It was a miracle that they made her vice president. What do you make of that case from Nancy Pelosi?
I think that was Nancy Pelosi's nice way of not saying that Kamala Harris is not, the correct choice for vice president, because I think if we go back, we have to remember the 2020 presidential election. Kamala Harris did not even win her own state, right? She couldn't get a delegate from her own state. I think that what people have to remember is when we look at Joe Biden, everyone keeps talking about his age, but I would ask people to focus on his health. It's very apparent that Joe Biden is experiencing some type of cognitive decline, like right before our eyes, whether it's via interview, whether it's press conferences that he's had. It's very apparent. What we have to ask ourselves, if something were to happen to Joe Biden, let's say he has to step down for health reasons, would you be comfortable with Kamala Harris being president of the United States? I think she struggles during interviews. I think we have to remember that she was actually put in charge of the border, the immigration situation. That was her task that was assigned to her by President Biden. And she doesn't seem to be making any type of headway or gains there. There's still kids in cages at the border. So I think what Joe Biden did is he chose someone that would appeal, I guess, to the African-American community, that would also appeal to women. Chose that person to help him basically, get over that hump to beat Donald Trump in 2020. But here we are now, and we see that Joe Biden is experiencing some type of decline. And now there is worry or concern that Kamala Harris may have to step in at some point or another to assume that position. But I throw this back to people like Barack Obama and mainstream media that heavily criticize someone like a Bernie Sanders, who was mentally equipped for that position. I have many criticisms of Bernie today because he's backed down a lot of these promises and he is supporting Joe Biden, actually. But the people, it was very clear, if you looked at the polls, the Democratic primary polling, Bernie Sanders was the candidate that the people wanted. But that wasn't the candidate that the DNC wanted. So they pushed Joe Biden on us. And I don't care, you don't win New Hampshire, Nevada. There's controversy over Iowa. Some are saying that Bernie actually really did win Iowa after they tallied all the votes. You don't win all three of those states in a row and then all of a sudden lose in South Carolina. Then next thing you know, Joe Biden is at the top of the ticket. It just doesn't happen that way unless there was push from the DNC, push from Barack Obama, and push from mainstream media as well. So they forced Joe Biden upon us, and now this is what we're stuck with.
It definitely doesn't seem, the way you put it, like a good situation. And I like that you brought up the fact that she actually does not just do nothing, or at least she's not supposed to just be doing nothing. She's supposed to be in charge of, the border response. There are a number of other issue areas that that President Biden has saddled Vice President Harris with as sort of issue areas that she's supposed to be busy in. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, you have some of the presidential candidates like Nikki Haley saying and pointing out that a vote for Joe Biden in 2024 is essentially a vote for Kamala Harris, because she expects that Biden will not make it through the full second term. Do you think that kind of message will resonate in a general election or leading up to it? Are people that hesitant to support Kamala Harris still like they were in the Democrat primary? Or do you think that's just sort of wishful thinking that they can beat the Democrats by tying it solely to Kamala Harris?
I think they'll have to come up with other reasons, but I do think what Nikki Haley is doing there, I think that is a smart move. I don't think it will make people support Nikki Haley, but it just makes people think about the fact that, do you feel comfortable with the country being left in the hands of Kamala Harris? We have to think about what's happening right now. There's the Ukraine war. So we have there's tension between the United States and Russia and China as well. Is this the person that you want in charge of foreign policy? When she struggles during interviews, she struggles to answer just basic questions. I remember when she was asked about the border, it was one of her first interviews, and she said, well, no, I haven't been to the border, but I also haven't been to Europe. That's not what we need for someone to run the country. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be well versed in reference to foreign policy. And I don't know about you, but I personally do not think that Kamala Harris would be great in reference to foreign policy. So that is something I hope more people do take into consideration. The fact that we have this war with Russia and Ukraine. Who do you feel comfortable leading the country, given the fact that we're on the brink of World War III?
When I think about candidates running on this appeal of identity politics, really is what it is. Elizabeth Warren trying to get the vote from women, Kamala Harris from women as well, J.D. Vance talking about his working class background. It really exposes just the cracks of running a campaign based on identity politics or trying to get positions based off of it. Because I think about, okay, Kamala Harris, what did she do for women in California? She tried to put mothers in prison when their children's attendance was bad. That is not a policy that helps families, that helps women. When I think about Elizabeth Warren sort of faltering on her Medicare for All position, women not getting health care, not exactly a policy that's great for women. And so when I talk to people about why I supported Bernie instead, it's really about what policies are good for people. And they would say, well, don't you want a female president? Well, it depends on who it is. If they're not showing up and representing the community that they come from, it's not really great to have that representation anymore. You need to fight for the community you come from for that to be meaningful. So when I think about a vice presidential candidate like Kamala Harris, and when I think about how the Democrats are running things, I just don't see that representation really happening. Do you think President Biden should pick someone else for the vice presidency for a run in 2024? How do you think that the Democratic Party should change things up?
I think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris should step down altogether. I don't think either one of them are equipped or prepared to run this country in 2024. I don't even know if Joe Biden is. I have my suspicions that Joe Biden is not making a lot of decisions right now. I have my suspicions that someone else is helping him. There have been speculation that Obama has been working behind the scenes to assist Joe Biden as well. I just don't think that he is the one that's making a lot of these decisions right now, given his mental state. And I think honestly, both of them need to step down. But this is a fault of the Democratic Party and the DNC, because they really force the American people to say that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee when it was very obvious that the majority of Americans did not want Joe Biden to be the nominee. But this is who they pushed upon us. So this is who we're stuck with, basically. There have been rumblings of a potential possibility of implementing Gavin Newsom, so to speak. I've heard rumblings about the DNC wanting Michelle Obama to run. But the reality is, no matter which decision they make at this point in time, they're screwed, so to speak, because they pushed a candidate on us that the majority of Americans did not want as the nominee. When a lot of people voted in 2020, they weren't necessarily voting for Joe Biden. They were voting against Donald Trump, not thinking about the fact that this president obviously would have to run for re-election. So he has to warm up to the people. He has to sell his platform to the people, and that doesn't seem to be happening. So here we are.
Well, time will tell whether or not the DNC learns anything from what they've put us through this time around, but hopefully they will take something away from this mess. We will be back with more Rising after this.